Hi there, I'm Chris Burrell. I'm the Atlanta Realtors Association President for 2025, and I'm here with Justin Ziegler, who is our National President of the LGBTQ plus Real Estate Alliance.
And also member of Atlanta Realtors Association.
That's right. And we are here to celebrate Pride Month, of course, but we're going to take this conversation to a different level than we have with some of our other videos, because Justin has had the unique privilege already serving as president to get to see things from a very different perspective than we necessarily see just at the local level. But before we jump into that, I wanted you to tell our members, ARA members, a little bit about the Alliance and the purpose of the Alliance, and really some of the mission and what the focus is.
Absolutely. Well, we have a mission really that's centered around the fact that within the LGBTQ plus community, homeownership rates lag behind the national average, so by more than 15%.
Wow.
And so there's a lot of affinity groups, multicultural organizations with similar missions, and the idea there is we need to get homeownership rates, up within those communities. And quite frankly, from the perspective of someone who sells real estate, more than anything, that's an opportunity to be doing more business with the community. And I think that we're really trying to promote the idea that homeownership is for everyone. I mean, we literally refer to it as the American dream. And we are just doing our part to ensure that more Americans get to partake in that and build generational wealth and have, you mentioned it's Pride Month, but how often do we hear people talking about the pride of homeownership?
That's right.
So it's a nice little segue there because we all take pride in different things that we do, and I think that one of those markers that people have, of whether you've made it, is buying your first house, and hopefully buying a whole bunch more too.
And I think something that comes to light when we talk about the Alliance is that for all our multicultural organizations, they're all open to anyone to participate. So is the Alliance. But I think one of the things that we see that kind of transcends these different groups is that you have members from many of those multicultural groups that are members of Alliance, just like they're members of ARA.
We love our allies. Probably about 20% of our membership are allies. And the way I kind of describe it is, when you think about rights for a minority in history, if a minority is going to rise to the top and be granted equal rights, then they have to have someone who's in the majority willing to stand with them to make it happen. And the easiest way to think of that is, in America right now, if that had never happened, then the only people who would be able to vote would be white male property owners. Mm-hmm. And obviously women can vote now, people of color can vote now. So that took someone who is in the majority, who had the right to vote to begin with, to say, hey, it's important that we expend this right to other people.
Sure.
So it's the same thing within our community. It is so important for us to have folks that that aren't necessarily identifying with the LGBTQ plus community saying that, no, I'm an ally for this community. And we're so thankful to have folks like that stepping up. And another interesting thing too is when you think about Gen Z. So Gen Z now is over 1/5 of Gen Z is identifying as LGBTQ. The percentage is actually 23%, so it's almost 1 in 4. And when you think about, like our membership, the percentage of them that have kids, that means that about 1/4 of our members that have kids probably have someone who identifies as LGBTQ. And don't we, as folks in our industry, want the best for our children? We want to make sure that we're removing barriers for those to step through, and so that they can achieve the dream of homeownership.
Sure. Say that stat one more time. I want our members to hear that.
Yeah, approximately 23% of Gen Z identify as LGBTQ.
Wow.
Right,
wow.
Right. It's different, and of course, you look at the generations, and
sure.
You get back to the baby boomers and the silent generation,
sure.
and that's like 2, 3, 4%. Obviously, so it's grown. Millennials, there's a lot more folks in the millennial generation that have identified as LGBTQ, but literally almost 1 in 4 in Gen Z.
Wow. Talk to me a little bit about what LGBTQ plus customers and clients are facing in the market when they are looking for a home or when they are selling their home? What are some unique challenges that maybe some of us take for granted?
Yeah, well, there's many, and I'll give you the MBA answer of it depends. But we see a lot of things. First off, what's really sad, and we're getting ready to release our 5th annual real estate report, and this year, because of changes in the administration, we decided to focus specifically on discrimination, which we don't do that every single year. We try and come up with a topic that brings something new to the table, and we've seen a lot of changes this year, and so we did want to talk about that specifically. And what's really sad for me is that we're seeing our members who are surveyed for this report every year have now identified that professionals within the real estate industry as one of the culprits for discrimination, which we had actually seen that go down over the last several years, but in the last year that's gone up, which it's kind of a sad thing for us to hear. We really hate that. But even beyond that, there are folks right now that are having trouble, past the discrimination of we're seeing appraisal issues. Someone has a partner, in their photo on their nightstand, and we have appraisers that quietly, adjust the values and things like that. There's a whole set of challenges for folks within the TGX community. Obviously, sometimes there's name changes that are happening. There are gender markers that are changing in identification, which makes it a little bit more difficult for the lenders to process that. And we actually have been working, one of our national partners is a lender, and I'm not naming any names, don't worry, but one of our national partners is a lender, and they've actually been talking to us and working with us on how to better improve the applications for folks who are TGX so that it more accurately, portrays the true picture and allows them to pull credit, get a better credit history, because obviously once you change your name, that also changes your credit history as well.
That's right.
And so there are those things. But there's also within our community, a lot of times we see, and Atlanta is a different community than a lot of other places. We see people that have grown up in rural places, Alabama, South Carolina, Kentucky, and they move to Atlanta because it's a big city, it's a great place to be out and gay. Some of them move here, in their teenage years because they've been kicked out of their home. And so I used to do advocacy with LGBTQ plus youth, and I was not actually aware of this, but the actual population of unhoused youth is much higher than we know because you never know it. So you have folks that are couch surfing. They find a friend that they can stay on the sofa with. They'll purchase a gym membership, so every morning they get up, they go to the gym to wash off and take a shower, and no one ever notices the fact that they don't actually have a permanent residence. But those are absolutely unhoused people, and the barrier to getting into the housing market when you're starting from not even having a roof over your head permanently is that much higher.
Yep, absolutely. Because it can impact everything from you being able to get an ID to being involved or working at certain places of employment because you don't have a permanent address, what have you.
Yeah. There was an article, actually there was a story on NPR just this morning, kind of a parallel idea, but it was talking about open records and how difficult it is sometimes to get records from the government. And the person who wrote this article was someone who's in the press, and they are used to going through the process of getting public information. But the reason why they decided to write the article and do the story was because they realized that as a professional, they were having trouble getting information. So, to kind of parallel that, it's very difficult for these folks.
Wow. Talk to me a little bit about the Alliance from a historical perspective, starting the Alliance, because it's one of our younger organizations, but it has deep roots. So talk to me a little bit about that for our members.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't realize this. We've only been in existence for 5 years. So this is our 5th year. When we first started, we were not anticipating it to grow as quickly as we did. So for instance, one of our challenges is we actually need a new website, which a lot of organizations go through that pain. But it's because we had developed it for a certain number of members, and then we grew past that number very quickly. So we were anticipating 3,000 members in 5 years, and we hit 4,000 members in 3.
Wow! Congratulations! That's awesome.
So it's not ARA numbers, but when you think about the number of people that have children that are LGBTQ plus, hopefully we're going to see a lot more allies.
I love that. I love that. What are so you get to travel the country, visiting different chapters and serving at the national level. Talk to us about some of the challenges that we're seeing as the environment changes, especially at, say, the federal level and some of the state levels as it relates to protections.
Yeah. So actually, let me actually walk that back a little bit,
Okay.
because even beyond what we're seeing in terms of legislation, I speak to our members on a daily basis, and there are a lot of people that are living in fear right now. There's a lot of question mark. There's a lot of executive orders that are happening at the
Right.
president level.
Correct.
And there's a lot of legislation, that's being talked about. There are so far in 2025 more than 700 anti-LGBTQ plus bills that are out there, and I'm not talking about within the housing market, just in general.
Correct.
And so I have members that are fearful. We have some members that are moving from the state that they're in to another state because they feel like, it'll be a safer place for them to live. I have other members, and we didn't anticipate that we'd be an international organization so quickly, but we have members who have moved out of the country.
Wow.
Because they're afraid of what might be coming down
Sure.
the pike. So I think that the biggest thing that I would take from that is really just kind of the fear that people are seeing. Like the changes are coming and legislation is happening, but more than anything, what's really affecting people right now is the fear of the unknown and what might be happening and what could be happening, because it's much easier to see something put in front of you that you can fight against, that you can stand up against, than it is to think of this nebulous idea of what will be next.
Sure.
So I think that is the first and foremost. We are seeing in certain states, some legislation specific to the real estate industry. And sometimes those ones that are going to affect the LGBTQ plus community most are not necessarily anti-LGBTQ plus bills. So, the bill that they're talking about in Texas right now, ultimately they are, I think that the idea is that if it passes, it would allow the state to come in and say, no, you can't give repercussions to people who spew hate speech online. And so that would effectively, depending on how it goes, it would take away NAR's ability to impose sanctions on people for saying really terrible things online.
Sure.
And the unfortunate thing is that a lot of us are keyboard warriors, and so we see a lot of folks in the industry out there that will say a lot of things behind the keyboard and behind their computer that they wouldn't necessarily say to your face.
Sure.
And so having some of those protections in place, knowing that there's a code of conduct that prevents people from saying terrible things about me because of who I am.
Yep.
And it's one of the reasons why I've always been proud to be part of the Realtor organization.
That's right.
Like,
Both of us. Yeah.
From day one, I always said that we were protected by a code of conduct, and this could potentially take a bite out of our code of ethics.
Yeah. And I think that's good for our members to hear, because historically our code of ethics in our industry has led the way in this core principle that everyone should be entitled to own a home.
It's just good business.
It's good business, right? It's not a political statement.
Would you
It's
mind
more...
if you sold an extra house this
That's
year?
right, that's right. It's not a political statement. It's truly saying we want everyone who has that dream of home ownership, or on the commercial side, anyone who wants to own the building their business is in, should have that right. And that's one of the gifts we have as Americans together, regardless of our backgrounds. And so I think you hit on a really important fact that our industry as a whole has been really known for almost 100 years or more in leading the way and helping shape that image into reality, making sure that that has occurred. And you hit on something that I do want to go back to, because, we are both openly gay males who love our industry, who love serving our members, and it is true. It is sincerely true that there are certain decisions me and my partner and you and your husband make on a daily basis concerned about our physical safety. There are certain places in Georgia I cannot travel. There are certain areas of town that I don't feel safe in. And when I talk about safety, it is at the very basic level of safety in protecting me being alive.
I mean, everyone deserves to feel safe in their home.
Correct.
And when I say home, I don't necessarily even mean your physical home,
Your
but your home
community.
is your community.
Yeah.
Everyone should have that right as an American to feel
Sure.
safe where they live.
Sure.
And I know exactly what you're talking about. I think that Atlanta, in many cases, has it lucky.
We're very blessed.
I definitely
We're very
see.
blessed.
I've traveled a little bit more this year, and so I've been to conventions where we're in a discussion, and at the end of the session, someone comes up to me and they're like, "I am so and so with such a a community local realtor association, and we don't have a DEI committee, and we really want to do something, but our membership doesn't really have a stomach for it." And I take it for granted, but we have staff members that are dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have a committee that its purpose is to listen to the needs of the membership and make sure that the needs of the membership, of all of the membership, are communicated and and that changes are implemented to benefit all of our members. But that is not the case in so many places. And even just to kind of your point, I mean, there have been plenty of times where I'm on a vacation to the mountains or something like that. Maybe not in our state, maybe in our state, but I'm going to a restaurant, with my husband, and even though I am not necessarily fearful for my immediate safety, one of the first things I do is I look around and I see where's the exit and where's the other exit.
Sure.
And I think there's a lot of folks that have never had to worry about that or have never thought about that before.
Sure.
And when you have, it definitely colors how you say things a
Sure.
little bit.
Absolutely. I think that also brings up, a lot of times I think our members and we see in our communities during Pride Month a very different vision and image than what was the reason.
I wish my life was exciting, as exciting as
Right.
Pride looks.
Right. So, I mean, as we begin to wrap up, can you share kind of just a short summary of really Pride Month is not just a celebration, it's more.
Yeah, well, so interestingly enough, Pride for us is something that started as a bar raid and a riot. It was a fight for equality and for acceptance. And I remember being 17 or 18 the first time I ever went to Atlanta Pride. And I had no idea what I was in store for, but starting at about 12 when I started watching the news with my mother at dinner at night, every year it would come along and I'd see it on the news, and I had no idea what to expect
Sure.
or what it was going to be. And when I got there, what I realized Pride was actually about was the idea that you can show up however you want, whoever you are, and be accepted without any questions whatsoever. And that's what Pride is truly about to me. And so, and I think to myself, well, how great would our world be if everyone thought that way, every single day? And I will say that Pride Month is the month when I do the most interviews. It's when I travel
Sure.
the most. It's
Sure.
when I get the requests from companies.
Sure.
And, I love that our organization takes it seriously year round. And it is one of those things where Juneteenth can't be a one-day thing a year. It has to be something that inspires you throughout the year.
That's right.
Same thing with Pride. Same thing with all of these other all of these other organizations that are working with marginalized communities. We have to be thinking about that year round. But to get back to it, to me, Pride is really just about celebrating and being accepted for who you are, no matter what, however you show up. And I encourage people to carry that throughout the year too.
I love that. I love that. Talk to ARA members about how we can participate as either partners and or allies, for the Alliance, but also as members to serve our clients that may fall into
Yeah.
one of our categories.
So there's a lot of things you can do. First off, be a member of the organization. Like that's first and foremost. The numbers that we have help us. So we're getting ready to do Hill visits in Washington, D.C. At NAR mid-year, and we will be going and talking, and we did this last year as well, to senators and representatives. And one of the things that surprises them a lot of times, because I know that a lot of people knock on their doors, is when we tell them that we have thousands of members. Because all of a sudden, okay, that's constituents, right? Like,
Correct.
and I gotta get voted to stay
That's
here.
right. That's right.
So like that does have meaning, in the numbers. But even beyond that, being an ally in the rooms that you walk into, because the reality is, especially as an ally, you may get to hear things that people wouldn't say to my face. And part of that in that moment is correcting something and stopping that. So the idea of when you hear something or you see something, say something, that is important to be happening right now, because there is a lot more talk and there's a lot more, like I've seen a lot more hate speech online. I've seen a lot more discrimination happening. So, having those moments. And then as an ally and someone who is willing to speak up, get involved in leadership in everything. So, not just with the Alliance, but, volunteer as a member of a committee here and, be that good steward of equality. Get involved in your leadership in, if your kids play soccer, be a coach, go to those games and, speak up when you hear things like that. Just be that voice in the communities that you're in. But also, as you start to move into leadership positions within organizations, you are voting on the future of that organization every time you have a vote in the boardroom. And so, speaking with that voice of allyship is advancing the needs of the LGBTQ plus community and other communities as well.
That's right. That's right. I love that. As we kind of wrap up, I would love to know any final thoughts that you might have, either as it relates to the future, what you see in the future, or perhaps it's the vision of what you hope to see in the future through your work and through our members' support and our work.
Interestingly enough, and I don't think enough people think of it this way, but I would love it if there was a day when this organization ceased to exist because it wasn't necessary anymore. The idea that we had achieved, full equality, and that we no longer had to be fighting for home ownership rates to come in within our community. I would love that. I would love for us to work. I used to be an AIDS activist, and we always said we would love to work ourselves out of a job. And it's the same thing. The idea, and I kind of picture a society where, everyone is accepted, everyone is treated equally. Wouldn't that be the great ultimate vision? But, in the meantime, it's putting together policies and, committees that are going to help facilitate getting there. So the other thing I would say to members is utilize resources. So one of the things that we created this year is a TGX moving guide. So we were talking about barriers to entry earlier.
Yep.
This guide is actually not targeted, it's targeted primarily to other LGBTQ organizations and folks within the industry to give to their clients who, like maybe someone goes to an organization that's providing them medication or something like that. And that organization, finds out that that person is getting ready to make a move in their TGX. The guide is going to help them with some of the things that they need to know to make the process a little bit smoother. And so we provide those guides to be given out to basically the end user. So the other piece in that too, though, is if you're an ally and you're not too familiar with the TGX community, it's a great way for you to kind of brush up on some things as well. But the most important thing I tell people is you really, as someone who is a practitioner of real estate, you want to be doing the best you can for your clients. So people always ask the question, what areas do you work? And my answer is I work any area where I feel like I will be able to do the best job I can for that client. If it's an area where I don't have access to the MLS, I have no business working there.
Sure.
And if it's a situation where someone very specifically tells you that they're looking for a specific type of agent, be happy to take a referral fee and send it to someone who really meets with their needs. Don't try to fit yourself in there. Because that's part of the allyship piece too. If someone is looking for something very specific, I had a client one time that was referred to me who was a trans woman, and she very specifically wanted to work with a woman, and someone was like, oh, well, Justin's gay though, you know, and that for her wasn't going to work
Right.
because, you know, she had some past experiences with men and she did not feel safe with me. And the best thing that I could possibly have done was to find her someone that was going to really understand how to help her and get to the place where she needed to get that she could feel safe with.
Wow. Wow.
So many things we don't think about, right?
So many things we don't think about, and it really doesn't take that much effort. You know, when you're a member of ARA, when you're a member of the Alliance, that's part of the benefit, is being able to network and get to know fellow members, not just in your organization, but throughout our country as fellow realtors. And I think sometimes we overlook that, very much so.
The idea of being open-minded, right? Like, I've told people this, the absolute best compliment that I will ever give somebody is touche, because it means that they moved my mind and they made me think of something that I wasn't thinking of before, and I changed my mind because of that. And we have to be open to the idea that, you know, we don't know everything, and we don't know what we don't know, especially.
That's right.
And being open-minded to make that move. So, like, you know, that is the best compliment I give, is touche.
I love that. I love that. So I want to thank you, Justin, for coming and speaking today. You know, education is really a key component of us being able to broaden everyone's view. And I think that's what this series is designed to do. And so I greatly appreciate you doing that. And I want to thank you for serving on ARA leadership and for serving nationally on the Alliance leadership.
And for you as well. I mean, visibility is such an important thing. So thank you for being, you know, out and
Sure.
proud and serving our community well.
So let's throw it back to our members. I hope you've enjoyed this great video, another one in our series with our multicultural partners. And again, thanks, Justin, for everything you do and for all your volunteer work.
Thank you for having me.